Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Sovereign Health's webinar on emotional freedom techniques presented by Gloria Arenson.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with you to talk about EFT when talk therapy is not enough. EFT, which stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, is really acupressure for the emotions. When we tap on acupressure points, it stimulates the energy points and balances the body's energy and eliminates problems. The goal of the EFT is to heal emotional problems and wounds that are stored in the body of adults and children as blocked energetic patterns. As a result, negative emotions disappear, thoughts and attitudes change, and behaviors change. Our motto is, use it for everything. We can use EFT to treat anxiety disorders, panic disorders, phobias, PTSD, stress, fear, guilt, anger, shame, jealousy, painful memories, rejection, procrastination, depression, physical pain, compulsive cravings and addictions, and more. Adults, when working with children, and parents can learn to do this, can help a child through what we call surrogate tapping, because children can't always do this for themselves. So with surrogate tapping, the parent or the adult will tap on himself or herself while using the EFT protocol, and you can either sit next to the child, hold the child, gently touch the child. We also can use a toy like something called a tappy bear to assist the little ones. My youngest client was 2 years and 3/4, and her mother brought her in because she wanted to enter her in preschool now that there was a new baby, but she had to be toilet trained, and this little girl would not poop in the potty. So I had a tappy bear, a bear that had the EFT points embedded in its fur, or you can just put colored tape there. And we tapped and played with Tappy Bear, talking about putting her poop in the potty. It was a very enjoyable time, and afterward Mother called and said not only was she toilet trained, but she was tapping on her baby brother, which I thought was very, very sweet. Some cautions. Even though you will see wonderful results with the EFT, it's very important to know who you are treating. Be very careful if someone has a medical problem. Make sure that you understand what's going on. If necessary, contact and talk to the doctor. Be careful when someone has undiagnosed pain. And unless you really know your way around personality disorders or psychosis, again, make a team with the person's medical and other professionals and be very, very careful. On a biological level, what happens when we gently tap on acupuncture and acupressure points is that there are mechanoreceptors on the skin that respond to the acupressure tapping. And the tapping stimulation is carried to the brain where it disturbs the pattern that's causing the problem and allows change to take place. So how do we tap? We just call it tapping. The first place we always begin is on the edge of the hand, the outer edge under the little finger, and we call it the karate chop spot because that's the place where if you were doing karate you would break the board. Most of us use more than one finger, and we gently tap against the whole edge of the hand. That's always where we start. Here are the other tapping points. And you can tap in any order, but most of us tap from top to bottom because it's easier that way, and it's easier to learn. So we start with tapping. Usually you can use at least 2 fingers or more, but you're going to gently tap on the crown of your head, move down, and with 2 fingers touch the hair where it starts to grow near the nose and gently tap there for about 3 seconds, very gently. Then the side of the eye socket, not the temple, the outside edge of the eye socket, under the lower lid of the eye, under the nose, under the lower lip, right under the collarbone. We're going to skip the tender spot for now because it's not an acupressure point. And then 4 inches under the armpit. So for a man, it's parallel to the nipple, and for a woman, it's just above the bra. And that's very easy to learn. There are 5 steps to an EFT treatment. The first step is to target the problem. What is it you want to treat? Well, there are 2 kinds of problems, or 2 approaches. One is global, and a global problem is a more general problem. A person might say, I'm depressed. That's pretty general. Or come in and say, I'm having trouble sleeping, or I'm having nightmares. The specific topics will respond even better because you're pinpointing more directly. An example of a long-term problem, of course, is something like addiction or panic attacks. Also, many people are suffering from trauma, from very unpleasant memories or experiences, or it may simply be a present-day issue in a relationship or a work relationship where a person is feeling anxious, stressed, and maybe angry. Step 2 is rate the SUD level. SUD, S-U-D, stands for subjective unit of distress. In other words, how upset are you when you think of your problem? From 0 to 10, with 10 being the most intense. 0 is neutral. 0 is not necessarily happy. If you have a client who's been raped, when they get to 0, they're not going to be glad they were raped. But in the case of one young woman I worked with, at her last session, when she got to 0, and I said, now let's think about what happened to you, she simply said, what a jerk that guy was. And she walked out. She was fine. So 0 is neutral. Yes, it happened. It didn't not happen. It happened. But I'm not having any reaction anymore. Step 3 is the focusing statement. In order to get a good result with EFT, you have to focus on calling up the problem and the negative emotions and sensations that go with it. It's as if it's actual pain and you want to treat the pain. So the focusing statement consists of describing the problem and adding a positive thought. For instance, even though I was in an automobile accident and it was terrifying, I'm giving myself a treatment now. Even though I'm furious with my teenager because he won't clean his room, I'm doing the best I can. Or even though I have so much anger toward my mother-in-law, I still deeply and completely love and accept myself. Now, as you say this focusing statement 3 times, you tap the karate chop spot as you speak. Step 4, use a reminder phrase. So as you tap the karate chop spot, you're going to be saying the complete focusing statement. You're going to describe it. And it's okay to make it long, even though I'm angry with my husband because he said he was going to be home on time for us to make the show, and then he didn't come in time, and we got terrible seats, and I'm just furious with him. So it can be that long. But when you are tapping the rest of the points, you're going to use just a quick reminder. So for that, it would just be, we were late, or late to the show, or hate my mother-in-law, or car accident. Just to remind yourself what it is that you are treating. Now, what do I mean? Use your own words versus a script. EFT is spreading all over the world. Many, many thousands of people are using it now. And some of the people who are teaching it, many of the therapists who give webinars or seminars, have created a tapping script. In other words, they're going to tell you what to say as you tap each point. Some people find this helpful, but personally, I don't, because when you use your own words and in the privacy of your own head, you can use any words you want. If you want to curse, you can curse. You need to be authentic. And sometimes when I've tried a script written by someone else and I tap 8 points, 7 of those sentences that they gave me have no meaning for me. And maybe one of them will jar me and I'll go, oh boy, I really identify with that. So use your own words and you can't go wrong. What do I mean by no Pollyanna talk? Pollyanna talk is, for instance, a woman whose mother had abused her and one time had really harmed her, was tapping, even though my mother acted so cruelly, everything's going to be okay. Well, everything wasn't going to be okay because she was suppressing her anger and resentment toward her mother. So don't try to say everything is fine when it isn't. You need to, again, be authentic. Step 5, after, and let me just go back to step 4, as you use your reminder, you are going to be tapping each of the points that were on the chart, and you will just say those few words, either out loud or in your head, as you tap each point. After you finish 1 or 2 rounds, take a deep breath, let it out, and take stock. If you're working with a client, ask your client, what did you just notice? And see what they answer. If the person still is angry or resentful or frightened or stressed, then you keep going. You repeat steps 4 and 5, stopping after each one to say, now what did you notice? Until you reach 0. Then when the person is at 0, which means they're neutral, yes, it happened. Okay, that happened. I had the car accident. And yeah, my car was totaled or my arm was broken. Okay, but I healed. I'm okay now. And it happened. However, if there is something else, then again, you want to go back and you want to do some more rounds. A round can be done in maybe 30 seconds to a minute. So you can do a lot of work in a very short time. And feel free to change the words as the way that you or a client are experiencing it, because it will change as the healing takes place. Now, as a person taps, often they will have new thoughts come up, or memories, or other issues or sensations will come up. So they seem to be jumping around. And I want to give you an example. These we call aspects. If you think of the problem, the presenting problem, as a tree, the aspects are the branches. They contribute to what the person is coming in for. This is a session I had with a client in her 30s that I called Donna. Donna was a single parent with 2 small children and a busy job. And she told me she was very tired all the time. And this is what she said. It's hard to get myself to go to bed, because I have trouble falling asleep and staying asleep. So we started out with focus on my sleep problem. That was her reminder phrase. She tapped around about my sleep problem, and I said, well, what did you notice? She replied, after the birth of my first baby, I was very depressed, and I couldn't sleep for days at a time. So we chose the reminder, birth of baby. She tapped around, reminding herself, birth of baby. And when I said, what did you notice? She said, my marriage was in trouble at that time. So the 3rd round was troubled marriage. After she tapped, she said, I'm suddenly thinking about how I'm afraid of the dark. Now, aspects also can signal that other material is surfacing that is related to the original problem. And I think that's what was happening. As she tapped afraid of the dark, she looked at me and said, I was molested by a neighbor when I was small. So we tapped molest memory. What did you notice? She said, I told my parents. So then we tapped again on molest memory. And I said, what did you notice? She said, nothing much. She tapped again, remaining molest memory. What did you notice? I remember that I would wake up during the night and feel all alone while the others slept. It was dark and scary. She tapped awake and alone. And when I said, what did you notice? She said, I'm feeling better. So I just asked her to tap remaining memory. And after that, she said, I feel okay. At this point, I asked her to one more time go back to revisit the molest. And at that point, she was at 0. She felt neutral about it. There was no upsetting emotion left. And after this, her sleep started to improve. So that's what aspects are. And most people will have lots of aspects. Another way of treating aspects is to use what I call narrative tapping. And I love narrative tapping because anyone can do it by themselves when they're all alone and they have a problem and they're not near their therapist or a good friend to talk about. Narrative tapping is simply pretending that you're on the phone with your very best, closest friend. And you're talking to the friend and you're telling the friend all about your problem. I like to do it walking around. There's something about walking around and talking out loud. Or you can talk in your head. I like to talk out loud. This is how one of my clients did it in front of me. There was a woman named Tracy who was 60 years old. She was a professional woman. And she came in because she had been waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, feeling a terror and thinking about dying. And this had happened over and over again for more than a week, and she was starting to be afraid to go to sleep at night. So I asked her to tap on this. And after she tapped her karate chop, she started to tap on her points. And you change your sentence with each new point. So this is how it sounded. Top of the head. I don't like these feelings of terror. I'm afraid. Eyebrow. No, uh-oh. Next week is my 60th birthday. 60. That's old. At side of the eye. This aging thing is terrible. I don't want to get old. Under the eye. Getting old means becoming invisible and I'll fade away. Under the nose. People won't take me seriously and know who I am. Under the chin. When people know who I am, it makes me feel alive. Under the collarbone. I'm an achiever. I want to keep it that way. Under the arm. But it's too late for me. Time and opportunity have passed me by. When she went back to the Crown, she said, no, it's never too late. Who knows what else I'll do in my life? And the next point, suddenly she said, but I feel such regret. And she said regret and tapped an entire round, just feeling the regret. Then she continued, I'm remembering all the men who are my contemporaries. They are out there leading things, being renowned. Next point, anger. She got really in touch with the anger. And she tapped an entire round just being angry, 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 and really feeling it. Then the next point, you know, my generation couldn't achieve like those men. We were supposed to be wives and mothers. Next round, next point, too late. You only get one chance and I blew it. Next point, that's nonsense. Next point, but I feel so sad, and she tapped around as sad. Next point, you know, I'm through with this stuff. I don't need it anymore. And she looked at me and said, I feel better now. So you could see all the different emotions she was getting positive, and then she would get really in touch with her anger, really in touch with her sadness. And this took less than 5 minutes. After that, her sleep improved, she stopped thinking about the past, and she got on with her life and her business and was very successful. So let's just, for a moment, look at what I've told you already. This is a cheat sheet to have when you start doing EFT with others or for yourself. So you know we start with identifying a problem, then tuning into the feelings and establishing the subjective unit of distress from 0 to 10. Then creating a focusing statement and tapping the basic points. Once you've finished, you ask, how are you feeling now? Did the sub-level go down by 2 or more? If the answer is yes, you just keep tapping until you reach 0. But if the answer is no, then you check for aspects. Are there other things involved? Are there memories? Are there other parts of the person's life? And again, you repeat the setup, repeat the formula, and ask, how do you feel now? If the person's sub-level is going down, then you just continue until you reach 0. But if things are not going well, then you check for blocking beliefs, and we'll talk about that in a second. And again, you repeat the basic formula, focusing on the blocking belief. You keep doing that until you're at 0. But again, if you're simply not getting a good result, you might be working with someone who has a lot of allergies and sensitivities, or someone who has a very serious illness like cancer, or even some people with addiction may not be as responsive. So again, you check for aspects, you check for negative beliefs, and if all else fails, find a specialist in EFT and talk it over with them and see if they have any other ideas for you. Let's talk for a minute about blocking beliefs. Blocking beliefs are very, very common, and we really, even if you're just doing talk therapy, you want to listen for the negative beliefs that are self-fulfilling prophecies. The most common one is, I don't deserve to get over my problem. The second one, God is punishing me, reminds me of a client, lovely gal in her 20s, very, very, very overweight. She came in to see me because of her compulsive eating. After, when she came in for her second session, I usually ask my clients to keep a food diary, and she had really not done anything I suggested. She was continuing to eat and eat and eat, So we tried, reviewed, tried to work with her on her compulsion. She came in for her third session, and as we tapped, she looked at me and said, God is punishing me because I committed the sin of gluttony, and my punishment is to be fat. And she never came back. There just was not any way that I could work with her very, very strong religious beliefs and her need to inflict what she thought was God's will on her. Very sad. The third blocking belief, I won't be safe if I get over this problem. Number 4, I'm not sure I want to get over this problem. Number 5, I will be deprived if I get over this problem. It reminds me of compulsive eaters who think, I'll never eat chocolate again. 6, I will lose my identity if I get over this problem. 7, it will be bad for someone else if I get over this problem. 8, there are good things about having this problem. 9, I'll never get over this problem. And 10, it's impossible for me to get over this problem. I had a client whose name was Damon, a middle-aged man, wonderful father, husband, successful at work, well-liked, with a very troubled past and very, very low self-esteem. He said to me, we were tapping one day on what he brought in, and all of a sudden he looked at me and he said, when I was a little boy, I was molested by my therapist. And after that, Damon was so despondent, and he said, I don't deserve to get over my problems, and it's impossible to get over this problem of having been molested. He said to me, what that man did to me is permanent and can never be changed. I am damaged. He saw himself as someone condemned to be miserable for life, since he believed that that damage was impossible to heal. And as a result, he had done some very terrible things through his life that he regretted and felt very guilty about. I have to say that I had my fingers crossed as we worked on this, because he was so adamant and he was so sad at the thought that he was forever damaged. So we started to tap. And after a few rounds, he said, I'm just a human being, and they mess up a lot. I've tried to make good come out of the unforgivable things that I did. And then we tapped some more. And he said the root of the whole thing is what was inflicted on a little kid who couldn't possibly cope with it. The important thing is to learn from it and go on. Then Damon started to tap about his self-blame, that it was all his fault that he was molested. And he said, it's going to be okay, and I'm okay. And when I asked him to tap about the perpetrator, there was compassion in his voice. And he said, he was a troubled person who didn't know the right way to deal with children. And you could see that burden just lifted from him energetically. And he began to like himself more, and he felt more powerful in his life. So looking for blocking beliefs is very important. The first thing I do when I meet with a new person is I teach them how to tap to eliminate stress. Because all of us are stressed every day. We have all kinds of stress, physical stress, emotional stress, all kinds of stress, world stress. So the way that I teach people how to use EFT for stress is very, very simple. And I would like all of you who are here with me at this class to do this along with me. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to just take a deep breath and let it out. Okay. Now this time I'm going to ask you to rate the satisfaction of that breath on a scale of 1 to 10. This time with 10 being the best, most satisfying breath you're capable of today. Of course, if you have asthma, your breath is not going to be as good as someone else's. I have to say mine was about a 6.5. Now, what does that mean? What is that telling me? Well, of course, I'm stressed because I'm teaching, I'm energized, but it also, when we are stressed, we hold ourselves tight. So the lungs are really not able to breathe deeply. Here's how we release that. We're going to tap our karate chop spot, edge of the hand, and say along with me, even though my breath is constricted, I'm giving myself a treatment. Second time, even though my breath is constricted, I'm giving myself a treatment. Third time, even though my breath is constricted, I'm giving myself a treatment. Now we're going to tap. And we can just say breath, or we could say stress, or maybe you know what's stressing you. Okay, constricted breathing, top of the head. Now I like to use two hands, and I like to tap alternately on my points because I'm adding, I'm cheating, I'm adding a little bit of EMDR in here. EMDR is alternate stimulation of the left and right hemispheres of the brain. So the left-right tapping will even make your results better. Okay, eyebrow, this stress. Outside edge of the eye socket, this stress. Under the lower lid, this stress. Under the nose, this stress. Under the lip, this stress. Under the collarbone, this stress. Under the arm, this stress. Let's give ourselves one more round. Top of the head, this stress. Eyebrow, this stress. Outside edge of the eye, this stress. Under the lower lid, this stress. Under the nose, this stress. Under the lip, this stress. Under the collarbone, this stress. Under the arm, this stress. Okay, let's breathe again. I have to say that's an 8.5 for me. Now that wasn't hard, was it? While I talk, you might want to keep doing that and see what happens if you are not up there at an 8, 9, or 10. Now as you tap for stress, some aspects may come up for you, and you may notice what's stressing you today. If so, later today, take some time to tap on that. Okay, we can use EFT to treat anger. And as I mentioned before, I love to do narrative tapping, especially when I'm angry. I like to walk around and yell and scream at whoever it is. Of course, I close the door and just say whatever's on my mind, even though it's not nice sometimes, but you need to be authentic in order to get rid of the poison. So tap when something or someone gets in the way of what you want. And as I said, it's okay to yell, it's okay to say anything until something shifts. And you will be amazed how you will be able to take another look at who or what is making you so angry. EFT is the treatment of choice for fear. I cannot, well, I'm always amazed at how EFT can help people take away fear. It's startling and it's so reassuring. Fear Fear begins in the limbic system of the brain. And in the limbic system are two important structures that we need to keep in mind. One is the hippocampus, which is the memory module, and the other is the amygdala that I like to call the smoke alarm of the brain. The amygdala never sleeps. It's always on call. If anything is going to frighten us, it will let us know immediately. The way that fear starts is that a threat occurs. And the threat can be something like being a little child and a great big dog knocks you down. Or it can be the angry look on a father's face. Or a teacher embarrasses you in front of the class. It could be all kinds of things that are threatening and scary. At that moment, the amygdala goes into red alert because you're in danger. When that happens, the prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking part of the brain, goes offline, because if your life is in danger, you really don't have time to think. You've got to react. And you do, and we each react with one of these: fight, flight, or freeze. After the threat is over and we have survived, then the prefrontal cortex comes back online and it says, what in the world was that? At that moment, we make a decision. Sometimes we're only 3 years old when we make this decision, so this decision is not always really an adult and well thought out decision. But if you're 3 and a dog knocks you down, you might decide that dogs can kill you. So then you develop a fear of dogs. And that decision is locked into the brain and becomes a pattern. And when something similar, even a 5% match, it could be even seeing a picture of something, the amygdala will immediately respond and you will feel fear. That's a really shortened version of what happens. Now, EFT, as we tap, EFT raises the serotonin in the brain. And as you think of your fear and you keep tapping, the serotonin will flood the amygdala and disengage the trigger, so that in the future, when whatever you were afraid of happens or you face it again, the amygdala will not respond with fear, and you simply won't be afraid anymore. So it's pretty terrific. The EFT Fear Protocol that I use is to first get a history of the fear. When and where and how did it start? Then tap on the first time, the origin, tap on the worst time and other very upsetting moments, and tap the negative thoughts and feelings. One of the most bizarre fears I ever treated was a woman who was afraid of birds. And she was, and what happened was, and this is a middle-aged woman or older woman, and she would not go outdoors anywhere where there were birds. She wouldn't go to the beach, she wouldn't go to parks, she wouldn't eat in an outdoor restaurant because the pigeons. She would not eat chicken or turkey, and she would not purchase or wear anything filled with down. That is how intense this fear was. It turned out that the origin of the fear was when she was quite little. She had an extremely abusive father, and he kept some chickens in the garage. And one day he cornered her and held the chickens over her head, and they pecked on her head. So of course, we knew exactly where the origin was, and we started to tap on it. I saw this one, I think, only 3 times, and we just worked on this fear, And the last session was very interesting. At that time, I was taking a class in how to do collages, and I happened to have a bag of feathers in my art kit. I asked her if I could bring the bag into the room and have her confront the feathers, because that was her most intense part of her fear. So I got the bag and I stood at the doorway of my office. And I asked her how terrified she was, and we tapped. And so after a number of rounds, she allowed me to enter the room. We tapped some more as I slowly walked up to her. And best of all, at the end of the session, she had her hands in the bag playing with the feathers. And she kept in touch with me after that. She was great. She took her grandchildren to the beach, and she was a very happy camper. Now, when we tap on negative thoughts and beliefs having to do with a fear, it's really important to be specific, so that, for instance, a person who has the fear of driving on the freeway may need to tap on the belief, I'm going to die, I'll have an accident, I'll get lost, I'll lose control of my car. A bridge, I've had people who won't drive on bridges. A lot of fears about that, which I don't have time to share. And anxiety is a fear-related disorder where, again, you need to find out at what times and under what conditions a person is experiencing anxiety and use EFT. Search for originating events and treat them, and list the fear thoughts and treat those, and treat any specific situations about anxiety, especially things like public speaking or people who are uncomfortable in groups. Everybody's got their own anxieties. Panic attacks especially are debilitating. And again, same format. Take a history. When did the panic start? When was the first panic attack? I think most people will remember their first panic attack. I know I remember mine. I thought I was having a heart attack, and I was driving on the freeway, so then I really got panicked. Tap the worst attack. Tap other significant memories of panic. Tap about your fear of having more panic. Tap on any avoidance. I remember my panic attacks at that time when I was living in Los Angeles became so great that I stopped driving on the freeway. So avoidance, agoraphobia, and it can lead to other kinds of related fears. I had one person who reported that her husband would drive around town, but he would not leave the city. He couldn't leave. He was stuck in the city. EFT is also very helpful when it comes to compulsions. And here is a list of some of the common compulsions that we are surrounded by. Of course, alcohol, drugs, food, spending, and debting. There are some people who spend in order to not have, which I think is quite interesting. Texting today, I don't know what's going to happen because texting is becoming dangerous and people don't even realize that they're addicted. Exercise, sleep, caffeine, workaholics. I have to admit I have become a binge watcher with Roku. I'm going to have to do something about that one. Sex, computers, video games, gambling, reading, hobbies of all kinds, listen to music, playing music, sports, sewing, gardening, shoplifting. Of course, many bulimics will switch from bulimia to shoplifting. Nasal sprays, puzzles, knitting, hair cutting, and on and on. So why are people compulsive? What is the hunger? Compulsion and craving start in the brain. When in our lives the pain of hunger, anxiety, or longing creates stress, it leads to a rise in the dopamine in our pleasure center. Dopamine is the chemical that takes us toward our goals. It's a chemical that says, I want it, I'm going to get it, I'm going to have it. Now that's fine, because there are times in our life that there are goals we want to achieve. And what happens in a normal brain is that once we have it, then the serotonin can rise and we get a feeling of satisfaction. So a normal person will say, gee, I'd like a cookie. So they have a cookie. They have one cookie. And then the serotonin rises and says, oh, that was good, I'll get on with my day. But if there is a problem with the dopamine serotonin balance, then the dopamine keeps firing. I want it, I'll have another cookie, another cookie, another cookie. And you have a dozen cookies or more for some people. Now, the unfortunate thing is that the body does not automatically raise serotonin. And that's the problem. Sometimes this imbalance between the dopamine and serotonin can be genetic. It can also be hormonal. But I think that the reason for the majority of people that I see when I deal with compulsions and addictions is what I call super stress. Super stress is intense stress that makes you feel powerless. When you feel powerless, it's impossible. And that leads to treating the stress using behaviors or substances. A very quick, well, most people can't fight the craving and they become addicted. I shouldn't say most people, many people are so used to that craving they don't realize where it comes from and they just follow through because they're in pain. But one way that you can overcome a craving for just about anything is to hold that item, have that item, or imagine the item, and rate the intensity of the craving to gotta have it, gotta have it. And as you're doing that, tap, oh, I really want this, I want to spend it, I want to buy it, I want to do it, I want to have it, I gotta get it. And just keep tapping and breathing and rate the intensity and do it until the desire is gone. Binges are really important, not to beat yourself up with, but to learn from. And when I work with someone who is an addict or who is compulsive, I have them do, whether it's a spending diary or an eating a food diary, because what I'm looking for is not how much did you spend, how much did you drink, how much did you eat, how much did you throw up. I am looking to help my client learn that a binge is a sign of pain and stress. So we take a look at the diary and we look for the days where the person's behavior gave into their craving. And I ask them not to write how much did I eat, but how strong was my need to eat, my need to spend, my need to use, my need to smoke. Whatever the need is, how strong was it from 0 to 10? And then we make a connection between the intensity of the urge and what in your life were you powerless over. And then we tap not on the food, not on the alcohol, we tap on the situation. My favorite example is a woman, compulsive eater, put herself on a diet. Monday was diet day, beautiful, beautiful diet food. She was perfect. Tuesday she was perfect, all this lovely, marvelous food and no sweets. Wednesday she started out great, had salad for lunch. And then when I looked at the evening, it said a whole box of macaroni and cheese. Now that's a 10 plus on an urge to stuff yourself. And of course she was ashamed. But I said to her, what happened on Wednesday? And she said, my daughter was kicked out of school. Well, I could see where that's a 10 when you've got a teenager who's acting out. So the urge, I mean, she must have had an urge to really give it to her daughter, but that equated with stuffing the food, drugging herself with soft, loving noodles and cheese. Okay, so this is a quick way to learn from a binge. Finally, we're looking at EFT and post-traumatic stress disorder. And again, EFT is incredible to help heal the offending stimuli, free the energy that's used to hold the traumatic memories at bay, and help the person to be in the here and now. And one way that I use that EFT is to have the person watch the movie of the trauma, fast forward it, and watch it, and stop at moments of high anxiety and tap on what's happening to get through it slowly. Another way that works is what I call the Tearless Trauma Technique, which is quite amazing. And it really doesn't upset the person who has PTSD. The person is asked to pick one specific traumatic memory and not to think of it, but to give it a title as if it was a story. So it could be the rape, or it could be the car accident, or it could be the burglary. Just give it a story. And then I say to my client, I don't want you to go there, but if you did go there, how upset would it be? And most people say 9 or 10. So what we do is we just tap on the title, even though the rape happened, even though the car accident happened. I'm giving myself a treatment. And we tap a few rounds on just the title. And then I say, okay, now I don't want you to open the memory, but if you were to start to tell me about that memory, how upset would you be now? Now we keep doing this until their answer is, well, I think that I'm only upset with 3. Then at that point I let them remember the memory and tap it through. And usually at that point they become neutral. So that is very, very thrilling when that happens. And it happens very rapidly. And I must just share that I feel so sad that our government is not picking up on some of the latest techniques for helping the veterans who have suffered for so long. And this kind of treatment is amazing and does not take a long time. And when I think of the people I have met, especially the veterans, even from the Vietnam War over 35 years, who are still suffering with flashbacks, suffering with anger, suffering with addiction, and what we can help them with. So I hope that this has been of help for you. I hope that the handouts are going to be helpful for you to check yourself as you try this out, if you haven't already. And it's been a privilege for me to be able to share what I think is such a wonderful technique. And the other part of it that I love is that it can be an easy self-help technique. People can use it anywhere, anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. We have some questions from the audience right now, so let's go through some of those. The first question is from Soji, and her question is, where does energy tapping originate from? Is it from Eastern countries?
Well, it's based on acupuncture. So we all know that acupuncture has been around for 5,000 years from China, and we know it works because it's still around for 5,000 years. And so I don't know when acupressure came into it, but acupressure is simply a non-invasive form of acupuncture. Acupuncture needs a lot of training to do that, but acupressure is, easy to do. However, the person who really got this together for EFT is Gary Craig, who based his work on Roger Callahan's thought field therapy. So Roger had gotten into it about 25 years ago, and then it developed from there.
Okay, great. Thank you. The next question, let's see, is from Angie, and she wants to know, is EFT more efficacious with depressive symptoms or anxious symptoms?
Could you say that again? I'm not clear on what.
Is EFT more efficacious with depressive symptoms or anxious symptoms?
Well, I'm sorry, what was the second one? What kind of symptom?
Anxious.
Anxious. Well, you know.
Depressive symptoms or anxious?
You know, as I said at the beginning, our motto is use it for everything. And unless, as I said, again, you have to know who you're dealing with, and if it's someone with very, severe emotional problems or certain physical problems, basically it has no side effects. So it's effective with everything. I know that sounds wild, but it is. You can really use it for just about anything and every kind of symptom you can think of, including pain. I didn't speak about pain mostly because I'm not a doctor, and I try to go lightly when it comes to medical problems. But I know for myself, and other people, it helps with pain.
Great, thank you. We have a last question is from Pam. She wants to know, what if the fear is in a young child and we don't know where it originated, or they are too young to get the child to focus on the beliefs?
Okay, what a good question. Basically, you're going to tap on what you see.
12 o'clock.
You're going to tap on what you see. And I'll just use my grandson, who is now 10, but when he was 2, he decided that he wasn't going to take a bath anymore. And he was really scared and resistant, and we were visiting, and he just was not about to go into the bathroom. And so Grandpa and I were sitting with him, and we made a little song about it. We were singing, "Oh, no, no, I won't go, I'm not taking a bath today," kind of like that. And we were doing surrogate tapping on ourselves for him because we were energetically connected with him. And then every once in a while I would tap on his hand or tap on his little eyebrow. And we just did this in a very gentle way for a few, 2 or 3 minutes, and he jumped off the couch and went and took a bath. Also, my granddaughter was having terrible nightmares, and her mom just didn't know what to do. It was very intense. And again, I was visiting, and Mom and I sat with the little girl. And again, we tapped ourselves, we talked about scary dreams, and you don't, a session with a little child is only going to be maybe 3 minutes, and the dreams went away. So it's not like working with an adult, and children can't answer. You just need to deal with what you are picking up on and what they're telling you or what they're showing you. You can also do it with animals.
Okay, so thank you. That's all the questions for today.